going to move straight into an expert session, Genuine Experts, a company that I know very well, a company that I personally compete with, but have a huge amount of respect for. So TTEC, if you would like to come on up with our partner, Genesys.
This is your phone, huh?
That's mine, yeah.
Go start taking pictures.
She left me.
She left you, yeah. Okay, well, thank you all for being here and sticking around for so long. I'm pretty happy that I'm still here myself, because I'm coughing the whole day long, so you can all be very happy
There's a significant
that you have a long distance to me.
There is a reason for this.
Yeah.
Even though there's no risk, I tested 5 times over the last 7 days and it was all negative. But I can still imagine if you have me sitting behind you like this morning, that you think, I hope that he doesn't bring me any viruses. But I'm not. I'm not planning to. Clicker. Yeah, that is what he does on purpose. He competes with us as well.
Anything to confuse us.
I've taken the batteries out.
Yeah.
So what we would like to speak about, and we are here together with TTEC, our partner, and the gentleman there on the left-hand side is Johan Duisters, a gentleman that I happen to know already for more than 20 years. It's not easy. He is the regional VP for TTEC in EMEA. And then Joe Way, who is basically working for the consultancy branch of TTEC. And I think that whenever we have a question that is related to know how do you really operate things, and what should you do better in the contact center? And when I will tell you this is a good question, then we hand it over to Joe, because she has the answers on all of that. You seem to know her from previous days, so you know that what I'm saying is true.
Why were you shaking your hands when he said she has the answers?
What we would like to discuss today is really not about product, but it's more about one thing that is very important to, I think, all of us and also to Genesys, and that is empathy. And when we started preparing basically the session, we prepared it with Joe, John, and then also another colleague, Nick. And we were asking ourselves the question, how important is empathy? I found it pretty important. I do not know. What do you think of empathy? Do you think that it's important in the contact center?
I do. We had a conversation last week, and there was a debate over whether you can train empathy. But certainly if it's authentic, and you're not stuck in that loop of empathy, it has to lead to action. But I don't think anyone could argue that empathy isn't. The absence of empathy becomes a problem, right?
No, there was one gentleman, and that was Nick. He said, I don't give a shit as long as they solve my problem. Because I'm like you, For me, if I have someone on the phone, empathy is really important. I rather have somebody telling me a message that I might dislike a little bit, but in a very friendly way, than that I have somebody who's pretty rude on the phone and that gives me a resolution. If we are here in the room and if we think about empathy, who in the room thinks that empathy is important for an agent? Oh, that's the majority. That's good. It's good. Maybe Nick should see this.
Can we take a picture?
Yeah. And so I think that quite a few people here think that empathy is important, and most of us. And when you think about empathy, I've been building this word cloud up, and I was just looking at, what comes to mind for people, sympathize, sensitiveness, people really listening to you, that is important, I think, being able to relate to you, understanding that when you call them and you have an issue, that you really need help. And we had already quite a few discussions yesterday and also this morning around contact centers. And for everyone, and especially looking at all the changes we had over the course of the COVID period, digitalization is super important. But I always think, the more that people go digital and they try to figure stuff out online, and I think we are all very willing. I think no one of us, when we have an issue, the first thing we do is pick up the phone and call the customer or the company we have a problem with. Well, first of all, because 9 out of 10 times you can't find the phone number any longer. But secondly, we will all try to find a solution first ourselves. This automatically means that once you have someone on the phone, that you also hope even harder that that person is able to help you. because you already tried it yourself and you have not been able to resolve your issue. So I think that even now with all the digitalization, what we see and all those tools that are available to a client right now, that the real interaction even becomes more important, and therefore empathy is in my experience, super important. And Joe, I believe you had an example as well, right?
Yeah, we talked a lot back in the days of sort of your contact center environment, that the agent can be as empathetic and listening as you want them to be, but actually if they haven't got the tools to help them do the job, it becomes much more challenging for them. And they're trying desperately to have that conversation and listen actively and try and resolve the experience and whatever the problem and the challenge is. But if they've got 6 different screens to go into behind the scenes, it makes it much more difficult. And when we talked about this, we said customer experience and empathy is no good if the tools can't do the job behind the scenes. And that's where your digital transformation has to underpin. The flip side of it is if you've got the tools but you haven't got the empathy, it doesn't matter how good your tools are, because your agents, your associates may not use them and they just become redundant.
And I think, and that is also the one slide that has some kind of technicalities that we will show today behind us. The tooling is super important. You have to make sure that agents do have the right information at the right moment, and that you are trying as best as you can to basically predict what your client is asking for and what he or she will need. And I think that today it is completely unacceptable if you dial into a contact center and nobody knows what you are talking about or what type of question you would most probably ask. Another thing is like, the thing is that everybody is also speaking about voice of the customer, and I think when you are in our line of business, you pay very much attention to what other people are delivering from a service perspective. And not so long ago, somebody tried to break the rear window of my car, so it had to be repaired. And I had to go into one of the companies that can basically repair your windows and some other things that were broken as well. And when I went back from that experience, what was not a very good one, they were sending me an email, Mr. Bauma, how happy were you with the experience? And I thought, let's be very professional. So I really took time to write them and the experience. I told them exactly, the welcome was fantastic. They vacuum cleaned my car. It was nice and clean. The gentleman that first helped us, he did everything right. But the gentleman that was basically replacing the window, he was not more or less than rude. And then I sent that email, and I was waiting and waiting. And then 2 days later or 3 days later, I think again automated, I got another email. Do you want us to put your feedback in public? And then I think, how stupid can you be? So you have voice of the customer. There is someone who takes really the time to explain in pretty much detail and with a lot of respect also for the people that did a very good job, that it did not went so well. And then nobody calls you back. And then I think, okay, with our background, then I think, okay, customer service and NPS, tick in the box, we did it. We even send out a survey, but we do nothing with it. And I think that is the most killing thing you can do. If you want to improve your service and if you want to try out new technology, make sure that you always measure the success and that you try to improve what went wrong. And that is definitely not, this is not the only example, but I will not bore you with all my examples. But there were a few in the last few months when you really pay attention and you think, they do the right thing, and they ask feedback, and then you hear nothing back. It's really a missed chance for improvement, I think. So this is basically in line with what you already said yourself. Empathy is important to 59% of the people that have been asked. I think that here in the room it was even a little bit higher. But we are really from the industry as well, so I think that we look maybe a little bit different at it. So with that, a last thing, and it was mentioned before, like agent training. And I'm pretty new to Genesys myself, so I was kind of amazed. And I find this very important because, you can have the very, very best technology that you can buy on this planet. And then I'm not only talking about our technology, because we are not the only product that is running in a contact center. But there is also training for agents that Genesys is coming up with right now, just to help basically agents understand on how they can better interact with customers and how they can basically keep their customers happier. And what we also try to do is like measure before and after the training, like looking at specific KPIs. Are those KPIs scored higher 12 weeks after agents have been taking a training? And so from that perspective, technology without people will always fail. And I think that in general, and then I leave it over to TTEC, when you want to be really successful with customer experience, it really has to come top down, and it has to be something that is really embraced by the whole company, and not only, I think, by the group that is dealing with customer experience. Joe.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Technically it's Johan, but I'll let you off.
Give it to me then. So when you look at customer experience, it has to be proactive, not reactive. And that's exactly what we see most in the industry. We spend an awful lot of, let's say, effort and people and technology and money at trying to fix something and rectify something when people start calling in. Because 9 out of 10 times when they start calling, they get to the level where this should have been resolved prior. So that's one of the things that we see as a reactive means forward. If it would have been proactive, what if you would be able to, let's say, avoid 90% would be maybe too much. Let's say 75% of calls coming in because you already anticipated on things that were going to happen. What if you already knew that something was going to break prior to the customer figuring out that something's going to be breaking, and then proactively reach out to that customer saying, okay, we think this is going to happen, or we know this is going to happen. These are the ways forward where we, as an organization, would help you to avoid this. So it's already positive prior to the ongoing situation that might occur. As I mentioned, as organizations spend a lot of money in putting, I'm not saying a lot of people in the contact centers, but the technology around it, saying, okay, if it happens, and as Joe was saying earlier, and Erwin-Paul as well, you have a variety of different topics, different solutions, but that does not create one centralized, let's say, knowledge pool or anything around that. So what if you would be able to do this in another way? And some companies do that. So when you look at Ford Motor Company, of course, they started looking at the environment that was changing, and we see that now with most automotive industry manufacturers. We see organizations where there's a shortage of, in the last couple of months, a shortage of parts, a shortage of people that actually can fix what's going on with the car, etc. But most of us drive in our cars more often than they did before, because of that's the only way to get from A to B when we were allowed. So together with TTEC, they came up with an idea, and that's a joint effort between the two organizations to use all the data that they have at their disposal. Everybody has that data. It's just down to are we using that data to get the information out that we can then use to proactively go back to our customers saying, okay, this might happen or this will happen. And in order to do that, they would be able to say, okay, we're using the dealership analysis, the car that is talking to the manufacturer, saying, okay, this is happening, or I'm going to use the example, instead of saying, okay, my car broke down, now I got to go to the dealership. I don't know when the car is going to be fixed because the muffler, in this case, the part is not available. Where do I get it? How do I get it? Do I have the ability to prioritize these areas? And building the live solution, that definitely gives them the information that they need to, not saying prioritize, but in some cases do prioritize certain customers based on the fact that to avoid that the car is immobile for a specific period of time. Making sure that when this happens, they can, let's say, bypass the normal route because of Ford. And I believe you had an example when you drive a BMW. You had that in the past where they were calling you saying, can we help you up front, right?
Yeah.
And
So they have, obviously all cars are connected. And they can easily see when your car needs service, and you can nowadays see it on your app as well. So they had a period, and I don't know why they stopped with it, that they would call you, and like Mr. Bauma, your car needs service. When do you have time? And is it so complicated? No, but I was the first time they called me pretty amazed that they did it in the first place. So that already gave me a good feeling, because I had them already in my calendar. Call BMW for service, and now they called me. So now and then it's really like simple things that can make a little difference, at least from a feeling perspective.
So going back to that proactive part, if the muffler is not available, where can we get the muffler, and why do we prioritize that part for that specific customer? That's up to the organization themselves, right? You prioritize based on either your loyalty program or your money spent with you as an organization. That's a combination of factors. But it doesn't stop at that one. You can even take that one step further, and that's the next step that Ford together with TTEC is doing. They're saying, with all the data that we have, and we know how much mileage the car is doing, we know what the average lifespan of a muffler is. We also know whether the car is driving in Belgium. The roads are different than from the Netherlands, for that matter. All those, let's say, areas of data they can bring together and then turn around to the customer and make it proactive. Make that phone call to the customer saying, this is going to happen. Your car is up for service anyway. We know, and the muffler is probably not the best example for this one, but the suspensions are, by saying, guys, the chances that this is going to happen is very likely, because the car is telling us you have the mileage, you have everything lined up. We've already ordered the spare parts for you, and these are potential dates that you could come in where we service your car. So it's in and out. Not what we normally do. You drive to your dealership in the morning, you take your laptop, you take everything with you, you sit there and hope it won't take too long. Usually it takes till the end of the day. But if we do it this way, it's a service to provide proactively, and not having your customer turning around saying, this could have been faster, why didn't you anticipate on this? And when you get that survey back, that will be the tendency. It took too long, I didn't have the parts there, I had to reschedule 4 or 5 times, and the way that life does this, that will take that away. They can take it even a step further. Now, it's not rocket science, and it's probably not ever going to happen, but based on the information that the car provides, that the dealership provides, let's say you've got 1,000 cars in your fleet. All those cars have a certain tendency, a sort of track record, and also do the drivers. So you could use the information that you have and create a training scheme to work with the drivers, saying if you drive it a certain way, you extend the life cycle of the muffler, you extend the life cycle of the suspension, you extend the life cycle of the tires. It's never going to happen, especially not with us Dutch, because we drive the way we want, and we don't care what everybody else is saying, but it is a way forward where organizations can say, use the information that you have, tweak the information that you have, and use it to the benefit for yourself, your agents, and your customers. Because we're looking at CX, and we have all the digital transformation that we're talking about, and we're looking at all that technology that's required, but we also have the employees internally. If it's easier for them to provide that service with a smile, remember, 20, 25 years ago, you could hear a smile on the call. That's still the case to a degree. But there is no CX without proper DX or EX, digital experience and employee experience. If the employee is not happy in what he's doing, it might take a slight bit longer to provide the service to the customer that is required to get to the appropriate CX.
Johan, can I ask another question? Because now you said it again, and you said it this morning, that in the contact center world, basically, we have not been paying our agents enough in general. How do you solve that right now? Is it just like people getting paid more? Is it different per industry, or how do you see that?
Should I answer that? I think we're at the beginning of solving that. I think at the moment we're still in a world of pain. You know, we are some way between the traditional. Now, as a BPO, we have a contract with our clients, which by and large is based on a unit price that was agreed a year ago. And yes, you might have cost of living adjustment, but if we're not automating enough of the low value, low complexity that's being compounded by higher attrition because there's alternative roles. So I think we'd both agree. We haven't solved that. I think we're starting to solve it at the top of the sales funnel, how we engage with new clients to say the world has shifted, but we haven't solved it yet. We're trying our best. We are becoming a very different contact center environment. It's more of a hub. We provide knowledge for our direct employees and for their families, for example. If you think of a contact center environment 5 years ago, it was so different. Unfortunately, it was like a chicken shed. It was just rows of people. So, I don't have an answer. We're working collectively as an industry and individually with our clients. We're working really hard. But the reality is costs are going up. So if we look at it at a total cost of ownership, we still have a pressure to bring the total cost of ownership down, even if we're having to pay our people a fair wage for the knowledge they have in their heads. Yeah. So automation and self-service has to do some of that heavy lifting. Yeah. Do you agree, guys?
Absolutely. And that's part of the continuous improvement journey. Because as you said, we're trying to change it. We're trying to figure it out. I'll give you an example in the US, for instance, where a certain level of knowledge is expected of the agent, but we pay him a McDonald's rate. Doesn't work that way. The churn that you get for your people is outrageous. So you will never have that employee experience in this matter. So they will never be able to give the customer the experience that you think your customer deserves. So that's always going to change. That's always going to be a journey, which is a good thing, because if it's static, then something's totally wrong.
Sorry, just one more point. I think we have to fundamentally reimagine the things that are important in a contact center. I was out of the industry for a number of years and I came back, and my commitment to myself was I'm not coming back to have average handle time conversations. You know, we talk so eloquently about how important customers are, yet one of the overriding metrics in a contact center is if they are lucky enough to find a telephone number, get them off the phone as quickly as possible, or I will penalise you because you won't have hit your metrics. I think we are absolutely in a reset as an industry. And I think it's something we're, collectively we are. I saw you nodding, Joe. I think we're all really passionate about this.
I think COVID has accelerated that shift because previously contact centres would probably have been seen as the lower end of the wage scale and a starting point for many, many people. But with the advent of home working and that ability to be flexible and mobile and build people's work-life balances around themselves, forcing people back into a contact centre is not what people want. And particularly in the UK, we're facing a huge recruitment shortage because people just don't want to come back into a contact centre.
It's not just the UK. I think we see that everywhere, right? And it's not just in the contact centre industry either, but that's what we're talking about. But that's what we see more and more, where people are going like, okay, it's on my terms now. Oh, it's more on my terms now, please. Because for the last couple of years, they've always sort of been addressed like, yeah, okay, as you said, chicken in a row. Here you go. Yeah. And in the US, whip them every now and then as well. Everything is going towards the wall, and that's the old way forward. Luckily, that's no longer the case, maybe the odd one or two. But also when you saw the start of COVID, the changes that happened very rapidly. All of a sudden, you can't go to the office. There is an office, but you're not allowed in there. So everybody needs to work from home. And in countries like Belgium or the Netherlands or Germany, England, it's easy. But when you go into the Philippines, network, what do you mean? Outside of the building? Doesn't exist. So there is no internet. So it's far more difficult to get that done. All of that is part of the ongoing journey. All of that is part of the changes that we see, and not easy to change them back. And in some cases, I think it's a good idea that part works from home and part doesn't. And there should be a mix on that one, because again, that's the employee experience. But you need to have a proper digital experience to be able to deliver that. And never, ever forget, it's an evolution, not a revolution. Because the moment it becomes a revolution, it can become very bloody. People start going like, it's going in the wrong direction. It has to happen gradually, one step at a time. And sometimes you take a bigger step, and sometimes you take a pace where you are. But
Step back.
or step back. As long as it's not one step forward and 2 steps back, because then you're not going anywhere. But it's very important that it's a cultural change in any organization. And the moment it becomes a revolution, a lot of people will turn around and say, it's not happening, I'm not having this, or it's not me, or I don't want to be working here anymore. And instead of decreasing your churn, you're increasing your churn for all the wrong reasons. And we also, we look at the fair price to pay people for their knowledge. There is also a cost to getting to that knowledge. And if you then create a churn that goes negative, there's a cost associated that you have to calculate into everything else that you're doing. And having to do that, costs can go through the roof.
So there isn't one magical golden bullet. There never is with customer experience. When we say it's an evolution, it's because it's iterative. What might work today may not work tomorrow. And what doesn't work today may well work in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. None of us could have predicted how COVID would have taken us in the directions with customer experience that it has. And more importantly, the digital transformation that it has driven. Lots of the people that we've heard and spoken with today have talked all about the forced digital transformation journeys that some of them have embarked on, with varying degrees of results. Some have gone fantastically, others that their digital transformation has been so fast that the offline channels haven't been able to keep up because their processes and their mechanics just don't necessarily lend themselves to digital. So we came across the same challenge probably about 12, 18 months ago with one of our automotive clients. And it came to us from another outsourcer. And part of the reason that it came across was because the automotive client, no, he'd gone already.
Oh, okay. You were no longer part of that.
No. The client had been a part of the BPO for a long time, and we all know that sometimes that stagnation and level of comfort, you're in your comfort zone and you don't start asking the right sorts of questions. And customer satisfaction was not great, below par, fairly average. The cost of running the operation was too high. There was not a lot of digital experience going on. The brands weren't sitting in harmony with each other. They felt they'd lost control with everything. And instead of going in with a bottoms on seats, can we pay the bottom price? We went, actually, no, that's not what we do. And we sat down and we talked to them and we said, what is it that you want? And they said, well, we want to get control back. We want to harmonize our brands. We want our CSAT to be really up there. We want our digital transformation roadmap to be clearer. We want to feel like we're going on a journey. We want to re-engineer. And we said, okay. And so we went away and we came back with a set of concepts and said, well, this is what you've told us are your problems. So here's some of the things that we think we can do about it. And by working in partnership with that client, yes, there's still a contact center, but that contact center has fundamentally changed. The operating model looks very different. Its back office case handling system looks very different. There's much more digital interaction on the website for the customer themselves before they come through to a call center. We all know that actually the contact center is the last resort. For the majority of our customers, if they can do it before they get to us, they will do. So if they've come to us, it's because they don't know where else to go and because they found a phone number. But actually, it was all about the combination of driving the right customer experience with the right digital transformation and delivering the employee experience. So have the employees got the right knowledge at their fingertips through digital, through a bot, through artificial intelligence. And everyone goes, oh, we need a bot. But actually, you don't need a bot until you know what the problem is. A bot can only fix when you know how to solutionize and what it's going to fix. And we were talking to people earlier about, technology is only as good as the implementation and the usage and the integration. Otherwise, it's just a very expensive piece of machinery. So this particular client has been all about driving down their productive hour. It's been driving down their call deflection. It's been re-engineering how they work with their customers and with their brands to drive up that customer experience. But it's not been, here's a lovely set of digital pieces and we'll just fix all of these for you with a magic wand and some clever pieces of technology. So the evolution will be, this isn't the end. As we move through the sort of 2, 3, 4 years and electronic vehicles become more prevalent, then they'll have to rethink their customer experience and their digital experience again, but we're already having those conversations. So that's where the proactiveness comes in. The role of contact centers, the roles that technology play, is all about helping to drive the right solutions. It's not about selling a piece of kit.
Especially when you look in the automotive industry, right? If we, from all of us, how many of you think you will still go into a dealership 5 years from now and combine the car that you want, then go pay for it, and then go pick it up and drive home? Compared to, I'll put one together on the internet, because we have this virtual showroom. It can be co-browsing, it can be any other way of doing it. It's a digital showroom. I pick up the car I want. The colors will be what I want it to be. The seating will be what I want it to be, and I want you to deliver it at my front door on that date. I think that's where that car industry is going. And then the next step, looking at evolution, the next step is how many car brands will still be owned by car brands 10 years down the line? How many of those do you think will be owned by energy companies? How will we look at electronic vehicles? That's the next way forward. You see more and more organizations buy shares in those automotive companies, looking at, okay, how can we do just this by saying we reduce the cost that we have, but we increase the service that we provide. That's the way forward.
So you have an energy contract and they give you a car with it.
That's going to happen. Not that bluntly, but sorry.
It's an interesting concept that you just mentioned there, increasing the service that we have. Do you not think in 5 to 10 years from now, it's okay. Oh, sorry. With the resources that we have available to us in the next 5 to 10 years, do you think we're going to have those resources available to us to have new commodities so that the service that we will provide will be more of a circular service and more of a hiring and repair and reuse service rather than a new let's consume service?
I think the renew part will not take 5 to 10 years. It will come faster because it has to come faster. The entire way of thinking is we used to live in a consumer market as much as we possibly can. And with the climate change and all the stuff around it, people are saying, like, okay, how can I reuse what I have? How can, in certain areas, you can bring in your broken wash machine instead of just throw it away. They repair it, and then they sell it or give it to the lesser privileged. That's also a way of reusing it. If you go back 6, 7 months ago, that was just tossed away. You pay your, what's it called? Occurrence fee, and that's it. In the car industry, everybody talks about the electronic vehicle. It's not going to be owned by us people anymore. It's going to be part of a package. It's going to be part of a service. It has to.
I think there's also there's a new piece of EU legislation around right to fix. So organisations like Apple, who have thrived on, as soon as there is degradation to a battery, it drives that consumerism. I think the new right to fix means genuine parts have to be made available. You know, it's now frowned upon that you are actively driving some of these devices into landfill. So I think you're absolutely right. I also think you're right. It's not going to take 5 to 10 years.
If it does take the 5 years, we have a problem. Let's be honest about that. The change of thinking in that area is picking up speed. It has to. And if we're not able to retain, renew, or repair what is already around, the impact on the environment. Well, the impact on the environment, but also on the, let's say, way of thinking of people will be tremendous. Lex.
Do you mind if I go back to the beginning of this discussion, and that was about empathy? I'm curious to hear from TTEC or Citel. Is there a way you are measuring at this moment in time the empathy your agents are providing? Are you doing analysis on that? Are you training them on base of those analysis?
Do you want to go first, or shall I?
I don't feel particularly equipped to answer that question. We've got people here that will. The honest answer is I don't know how we measure it. I'm not sure at all. I don't know if you know, guys.
So measuring empathy is a challenge because what might be empathy to me may not be empathy to you. So it is subjective, but you can use speech analytics and emotion analytics data. Now, there is a whole debate around the use of emotion analytics from a GDPR perspective and whether or not the customer has given permission for you to analyze how they speak. However, as a concept, if you use speech analytics and emotion analytics, then you can determine the interaction and how the interaction is going. You can do that real time. So you can look at the pauses, you can look at the words that are being spoken, you can look at how they're being spoken. Now, obviously, going back to the technology is only as good as how it's implemented. It has to be different for every single country and every single implementation because it's based on customer. And sarcasm in the UK and cynicism would be very different to the conversation that my Dutch colleagues would have.
Or the Italians, for that matter.
Or the Italians. But you can actually measure it, and what it does then is it becomes a real-time measurement of customer experience. Where it gets very, very clever is where you can then start to pop. So you can start to provide nudges and prompts to the associate, to the agent on the phone that says, we can see the conversation is going this way, have you tried talking about this instead? Or actually you're having this conversation, but there are a couple of things that you haven't factored in yet from a process perspective or a risk perspective or a GDPR perspective, particularly if you're selling financial solutions and making sure that you've done all of that sort of FCA analysis in the UK. So it is still in its early stages, but it absolutely can be measured. And if you add it in with all of the other sort of, it becomes part of a suite of metrics. So you would look at how long the call is, but not so that you can beat the person up, but more so that you can understand, from a call control perspective, are they comfortably managing the call through to the end resolution? You then factor in, well, does it become a repeat call? Or have they gone somewhere else afterwards? But where did they go beforehand? So were they on your website? Were they in your app before they came through? And then how was the call managed? So yes is the short answer. It can be measured and it can form part of a suite of CX, but it involves some very sort of clever, I would say, pulling together of data.
And
but it's not impossible. No problem.
I was going to say it's definitely not off the shelf.
Oh, no.
It requires a form of intelligence, training, deep machine learning, because if we do this in Dutch, we do this in English, we do this in Italian, emotion is one, sarcasm is one, cynicism is one, directness is one. We're Dutch, we tend to do that. But it is per culture influenceable. And that means one size does not fit all.
I have a question.
Yeah, if we could make it quite good. The only reason I say that, and we will answer your question, we have a conversation at 4:00 with Caroline from Ritz-Carlton, and that is a hard start, certainly. So please do. I'll stop talking. I'm probably not helping.
Flick that on.
When it comes to data, I have a question regarding finding the right balance between customer experience and customer confidence. So why I ask this question is because earlier you were mentioning about finding collecting this information with the example of Ford and trying to build some solutions already even before the problems occur. Mm-hmm. But if I translate that into what the websites usually do is, maybe I can say cookies. yeah, many of the websites, they try and do this, and most of the customers are sometimes not confident about how this information is used. And how do you balance between providing a very good customer experience and, at the same time, giving them the confidence that the data is being used in the right way?
No, that's a good point. I think the cookies piece is more for when the customer is interacting into the website. The forward piece is actually connected data from the car. So assuming that as part of selling the car, and in the BMW example, downloading the app, particularly for these commercial customers, it comes as part of the package. So what happens is the functionality exists in the vehicle, and the information is then pulled through. So there's no customer information as such. So you're not reliant on somebody clicking on the cookies, because the information that's coming through is all about the vehicle itself. And it will tell you the mileage, it will tell you when were the wheels last looked at or balanced, or why is it off the road. Everything that Ford is doing has two main outcomes in mind, and one is making the dealer the hero, because that's hugely important to Ford and to the Ford network, and the second part of it is minimizing vehicle off-road time. So you've got the whole CX piece at the front, but actually the vastly important piece for them is the cost efficiency, because if you can imagine the thousands and thousands of commercial vehicles that may be off the road awaiting parts, it creates a cost. It creates a cost for Ford, because then they have to look at, well, how do we make sure that we're providing alternative vehicles? It creates a cost to the end user, to the customer, or to the fleet, which then drives a loyalty to another brand rather than the brand that you want to keep them with. So all of that connected data and that proactive CX has the two constructs in it of gathering the data to actually drive a better experience without them even realizing. Does that make sense?